So in the last episode, we were talking about arcades to an extent, and I mentioned that my favorite was like the games, kind of like the Avengers, or how is there a sword in there? I do not know. There's so many enemies right now, and there's Endore, I think. Yes, Endore. Not Endore Jr., but actually Endore. And stop, get away from me. So, that swinging is very, very helpful to your character. Come on. Took me down. But like, I don't know, I see the state of arcades nowadays, or what people call arcades, and I'm like, kids just don't know what arcades were like. And another game that I really, really liked, as far as that you could play at arcades, good grief, that's a great way to start this Let's Play. I mentioned House of the Dead, but there's another one, I can't think of its name right. Time Crisis. Time Crisis was a fun one to me. Just because of the way that it was set up, and we get to go and break into a bar, and look at all of these patrons. And chicken, I shall eat the chicken, and that guy, I was about to say, that guy looks like he's going to attack me. And why is it like, to be honest with you, is this El Gato reminds me of like a wrestler, to be honest with you. He kind of reminds me of the way he was set up. I think he was like Bunkhouse Bunk was the name of the wrestler. But I'm getting off on little tangents away from what it was I was originally talking about. Simmons! How dare you? Simmons, that should be on my desk at 5. And I did not, Endore Jr. and, ow, flame, no, jumping, ow. I'm just dying every few seconds, so it's, of course, then again, this is one of those where, I kind of, Wong Hu. To Wong Hu, thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. I'm just completely getting off on, getting distracted by every little thing. I see this guy's name and I'm like, To Wong Hu, thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. Ha! And it amuses me. And that's all that matters to me, is whether or not I'm amused. Oh, Endore! And whoa. We're in a cage fight now with G Endore and F Endore. It's a family affair! Family Man Endore and Gangster Endore. So it's like the Endore brothers, and I know how cheap this is, but if this works, I'm going to run with it. And this gives me the opportunity to kind of talk a little bit more about arcades. Like, just looking at the sheer amount of awesome games that were in arcades back in the day. Another one, and I'm actually going to be playing this for the channel, not the arcade version, but the SNES version. I love the beat-em-up game it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Secret of the Ooze, or rather, it was the arcade game. The Nintendo version is Secret of the Ooze, and I actually plan on making good use of that in the very near future. Am I going to be attacked by more? Or, no, I actually made it through there pretty good. Alright. I cheat my way through it, but whatever works is the way I'm looking at this. Alright, El Gato and I. Poison El Gato, To Wong Hu. But, like, again, I remember, again, Dave and Buster's, there's this light gun game that my wife and I wanted, or rather, I wanted to play. And the way it was set up, it was one of those, like, it's not for the weak of heart. It's if you're easily afraid, you shouldn't play this game. And I'm like, I want to play it. I want to play this. And how many game overs have I gotten so far? I may end up, like, trying to stick a counter up at the bottom of the screen or something of that nature. It's like, the cow's death counter. The death counter. But, anyway, like I was saying, it was like, it's not for the weak of heart, and it kept up with your heart rate while you played it, except for the fact that for some reason my heart rate would go from 100 to 50 to 12 to 70 back to 100, you know, in like a matter of seconds, and I'm like, no, I think there's something wrong with this counter. Because, you know, my resting heart rate and my heart rate is normally somewhere around anywhere between like the high 80s and the low 60s. Eddie! Eddie! Ah! So they got the cops on their side, it looks like. That looks like what Eddie is that Eddie is an off-duty cop, or that he's a cop, period. Ah! I keep falling to these enemies. But, I mean, it was one of those games that was so cheap that there would be times where... Speaking of cheap, I can't even get to this guy. No, don't run from me. No, that's cheap. That's cheapness. That's cheapness. Ah, no. Oh, boy. Speaking of being cheap, I mean, all right, go up, and then, oh, boy, I'm getting another game over, just like that, And Eddie is almost defeated, but I can't quite make, all right, I can't quite get to him. Can I throw a rock at him? Be like Killer Croc. I threw a rock at him. Oh! I threw a rock at him. Oh, that actually did work, throwing a rock at him. Cool. Where was I? Oh, yeah. But, like, the game was so cheap to the point where I would just shoot, and enemies would pop out, you know, where no matter what, they made sure that you lost energy in just a matter of seconds because, well, you know, it's fun, you know, fun, right, fun. Fun, that's a word for what they're hoping to accomplish. And there was even, like, they had a Luigi's Mansion there, which to me, being able to play Luigi's Mansion would be a completely awesome experience. Like, I have Luigi's Mansion for the GameCube. And so it's one of those where I'm like, of course I want to play Luigi's Mansion for the GameCube. You know, of course I want to play Luigi's Mansion. I have fond memories of that game. I have Dark Moon for the 3DS. Again, fond memories of that game because I'm a fan of Luigi's Mansion. Such a great game to me. And I like Luigi better than Mario. But again, there were cheap moments in the game where it's like, I'm designed to, you know, in these instances, to lose life. No matter what, that's how they designed this, for me to die. And I can't stand things like that. Now, I'm not saying that games back in the day didn't have their, you know, pieces where you go, well, that's just a load of bunk. Because they did. They absolutely did. And I'm not going to lie and look at, you know, games with rose-tinted glasses and say, you know, well, you know, games back then, they weren't cheap like they are now. I would dare say to an extent they weren't cheap like they are now. But they did have their cheapness. Ah! But, you know, there's some differences. So, I miss good old arcade games, and I would be out so many quarters right now, it's not even funny. I remember one of the first arcade games I ever beat when I was younger. I was able to beat, what was it? House of the Dead. And that, for me, was a cool experience because, you know, House of the Dead. I mean, House of the Dead is one of those games that, you know, again, very fond memories of it. I've actually got an interesting story about how I used to have a light gun for my Xbox, and I'm wanting to actually see if I can find some more, again, sometime in the future, and maybe see if I can get a hold of some of the old House of the Dead games. But I had the first 3 House of the Dead games on, what was it? It was on the Xbox. And my mother, like, there's a boss that I always had problems with as he gets another game over. That I always had problems with growing up. It was this giant, let me see, it was a, Oh, come on. Come off it. It was a giant sloth. And I would always have problems, like if you're familiar with the game, there's a scene where the sloth will jump down off of a cage and come striking at you as we hit the obligatory elevator scene in any type of beat 'em up game like this. You got to have an elevator scene. It's like law. But I was having trouble with it. My mom goes, "Ooh, I want to try this boss," and I'm like, "Sure, whatever, Mom. You want to do this boss? That's great." She absolutely walloped that boss and took it down in a matter of minutes. Like, as far as, when I say a matter of minutes, I mean like 2 to 3 minutes. She waylaid it. And every time that it fired a shot or tried to do one of those attacks, my mother was like on top of things. And I'm like, seriously? But House of the Dead was one of those games that just like, oh yeah, such good memories attached to it. It was one of the first arcade games I ever beat. And so I'm glad that I had the opportunity to really play it. Hello, Rolento. Rolento, is this the same Rolento from Street Fighter? I'm kind of curious now, as he just beat the living crap out of me. I'm telling you. Ooh, and he throws too. Ah, you tried to throw me, but you didn't. Aha, Rolento. Ah. Ah! 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 Of course, he doesn't hurt himself just then. Come on, come on, come on. Ah! All right. And I just tried to throw it at him, and I was able to pull it off, but not quite. Oh, see, and it's like I said, these games each had their own little bit of cheapness to them, in the fact that this guy is like, he's like superhuman, oh! It's like, no! He's, a bit of a superhuman there. Bonus stage. Break glass. Okay. Oh. Alright, so we're just going forward and we're breaking all the glass that we can. Break, break, break. Break, break, break. Break these glass panes. Break these glass panes. Break, break, break. Break, break, break. Break them glass panes. Break them glass panes. Final Fight was one of those games that whenever I played it, as far as game-wise, I always had difficulties with it, as you can see now. I'm going to pause the game real quick, and we'll talk more about Final Fight and games of that nature.